Welcome to JobGhost, the podcast, where we talk all things ghosting in the hiring process. Today, we've got an awesome guest joining us to share their story that I'm really excited about. He began his career in tech, spending years supporting global teams, device security, and IT operations, and he recently made the jump into sales as an SDR at Deel. Luis Allen, welcome to the show.
Oh, happy to be here and excited to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart as I've gone through different iterations of the job search process.
Yeah, we're super happy to have you here. And tell us a little bit more about what you have going on at Deel and then anything else you've been up to lately.
Yeah, of course. Deel is my first sales development role. I previously worked for another company in pre-sales capacity. So this is my first cold calling job. It's definitely being in tech and being the person who was always cold called in the past is definitely gives me a new perspective and a new respect for the people who are still calling me. So it's definitely something that I never knew that sales. It's not just about people. It's about self-improvement. And it's just trying to learn as much as I can every day. And things that I learn in my job at Deel not only are IT related, helping other people, but it's helping myself become a better person in general.
Do people ever ask you for tech help knowing that you were once in IT?
Yeah, they do sometimes. And actually, that's one of the things that I'm actually happy to. Our product works well with a lot of MSPs, which is where I used to work and have experience in. So I'm able to kind of use a lot of that tech background in my current sales role and help the people. They help me on the sales side. I help them on the tech side.
Yeah, I love that. Was it hard to transition out of tech into sales?
Well, SDR role specifically, yes, because cold calling, you have to condense everything you know, build that trust within the first 15 seconds to get the second 15 seconds. And then there, hopefully you're able to expand and use some of that tech ability. So it's been trying to hone those skills. And obviously the amount of rejection and things that come along with being a cold caller, it's definitely something that has been taking some time getting used to, for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. How were you able to do all of that? Like, how were you able to convince sales leaders that you could transition from tech into an SDR role?
Well, one of the big things that I've learned throughout this whole process is do the job kind of to get the job. It's something I learned from an associate sales director that is now my boss's boss, and it's just one of those things that that kind of helped me out there. Like even if you don't have the exact experience they're looking for, the qualities that are kind of transferable across any industry is being teachable, being hungry, willing to learn, and work hard, and just put yourself out there. I think work across any industry.
Yeah, those are some skills that definitely come in handy, and no matter what you're doing, really, right?
Yes, I agree.
So I feel like this is a good time to jump into it. Tell us a little bit about your interview experience, and maybe you could start by telling us your worst ghosting experience that you've had.
Well, the worst ghosting experience I had was probably actually in the sales process because I was working in pre-sales. So as a solutions architect, kind of working with account executives and all that. So I had some sales experience, but it wasn't the volume that a lot of companies were looking for. So I was trying to go for account executive roles. I kept running into the same wall where it's like, oh, you don't have enough experience. And there was a small company that was trying to expand into Calgary. I'll leave a lot of the particulars out for obvious reasons, but they were trying to expand into Calgary, and they reached out to me, and they were impressed with my technical ability and thought that would translate well into the sales side of things. So I met with the president at the new office in Calgary. I got a tour. I was able to have a really good conversation because he's a tech person who was trying to grow the sales side. And I felt that it went well because we went overtime. Like the other person that was being interviewed after me actually had to wait for us to finish. So I was like, oh, this is great, good signs and all of that. And then I asked for next steps as I usually do. Like, can I get a timeline? What does it look like? And he said, well, I'm interviewing 2 more people because I came here from Ontario specifically to interview for this position. So probably within a couple of days. So then I drove home and I was thinking about the role. I was very excited. I'm like, okay, there's great potential. I can have a lot of impact. I'll be the first account executive. And I was really excited about it. So I even sent him a follow-up message saying, hey, it's really great meeting you. I'm excited for this potential. And I even thought about certain ways and had certain strategies that I shared with him on that message and voice message saying, this is what we can do. I thought about this in this conference, and this is how this will help get your brand out there. And I said, looking forward to chatting further. And he responded, yeah, no, thank you for that. Definitely looking forward to chat again. And then I kind of left it until this was probably about a Thursday. I left it till the early next week. And I tried following up several times and just never heard back from them. And then a couple of weeks later, out of curiosity, I looked up the company and I saw that the person who interviewed after me was basically saying, hey, I'm happy to join this company. And that's how I found out, basically. I kind of knew since he never got back to me, but that's how I truly, truly put it to rest that he had moved on or somebody else got the job.
Wow. So you never heard from them again?
No, I didn't. And funnily enough, with this new product that I'm selling, I actually reached out and trying to book him. So see if well, you didn't hire me, but maybe I can sell you the product I ended up getting hired for.
He owes you one.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see if it works.
Yeah, wow. Do you think that you would refer a friend or family member to that company or encourage them to apply if they had a future opening?
I would probably not. I would say, there was a lot of good things in the company. He was really great to talk to. But I wouldn't outright say, oh, no, this is the worst thing you could do. But I would say, hey, this was my experience. Just take that into account when you're making your decision.
Yeah, definitely. Why do you think hiring managers ghost?
To be honest, this particular person was more of a tech-minded person. So I try to give the benefit of the doubt to people. So even though it was a bad experience, I'm like, well, he's a tech person. And they don't usually think about those details in the same way that other people would. So he wasn't your typical recruiter. He was just a very tech person that started a company with a friend and was just trying to navigate it. They were still kind of small, just over 50 people. But I think it just kind of slipped his mind. Maybe that's not in the forefront. I think that's what I'd like to think. So not to think that it was something that was done purposeful.
Yeah. I think that's a good point you bring up. I always say, I think most hiring managers aren't jerks, right? They just don't, they don't know what they don't know. And some people have never even hired before. And then they start, go off and start their own company. They don't think about those things. They don't realize the impact it could have by ghosting and how it kind of can damage your brand and reputation.
What have people told you, when you speak to hiring managers, what is their reasons for not following up?
In my experience in working with hiring managers, typically it's through recruiting, right? So they're like a client of mine and I'm helping them fill a role. When they kind of go silent or I have a tough time getting feedback out of them or getting next steps established, it's usually just because they're super busy and they just are having trouble managing their schedule, managing their team, managing their own day-to-day responsibilities, and then on top of that, having to manage a hiring process. It's a lot for them to do. And then being at a startup, a lot of my clients now are at startups, and that just adds a whole nother layer, right? Because startup life is you're doing everything all the time and wearing a million different hats. So in my experience, yeah, I do feel like hiring managers don't mean to be jerks. They get really busy, they get caught up, and they just forget.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. And me prospecting into SMBs, I do see that where people are doing and wearing a lot of different hats.
You mean, oh yeah, because your customer is, who's your customer?
Well, my customer is the SMB segment. So anything below 200 users is kind of where I'm the segment or vertical that I was assigned to from a cold calling and prospecting perspective.
What did Deel do really well during their interview process? Because it seems like you're loving it there. And I can tell a lot of people in general love to work for Deel.
They basically showed their values through the whole process, like deal speed, genuine care. Those are the kinds of things. And it was one of the things that from the time I interviewed, they said, we're in a hurry. This is what we want to do. We really want to hire quickly. And they answered quickly. I don't know if it's because they were salespeople that, before I got off the interview, they already booked the next one pretty much kind of thing. So it's when you're in sales, you book the next meeting before you finish the current meeting. That's just the standard procedure. So they kind of showed a lot of those things and they responded and they were very upfront and told me, this is what you can expect. This is what the next steps look like. This is how we think you should prepare. They set me up for success. It wasn't just we're trying to throw as many things at you to see to really, really test you. They're no, here's some tips to prepare for your cold call interview. Here's some tips for this one. These are the kinds of questions that you might get so that you have an idea of what to expect. And they did all of that from the first recruiter call all the way to the offer to signing. And even from offer signature to actually starting. If I messaged my future manager, she responded and gave me the tools that I needed to prepare.
Wow, that's like the dream process. So I imagine when they made you the offer, it must have been fairly easy for you to make your decision on whether or not you're going to accept.
It definitely was. By the time there were like 4 interviews or 5 if I recall. So there were a lot, but they were done in like 2 weeks or less from first interview to decision. And yeah, by that time, I pretty much knew if they offer me and everything looks good, then they'll definitely accept.
That's awesome. Yeah, way to go, Deel. I spend a lot of time talking about companies that, are ghosting and not doing a great job. But I also know there's a lot of companies out there like Deel who are doing the right thing and they get it.
I've been in, I would say corporate, if you want to say that, for almost 20 years or just over 20 years. And honestly, if I have to put a percentage to it, it's less than half of the companies that I've interviewed for, I would say, actually have a solid, good interview process or an experience similar to Deel. I don't know if that's your experience.
It's funny, people ask me that, and it's hard to say. My experience has mainly been staffing for companies, so I can kind of control that process. But a lot of the stories I hear are from people who I'm not directly helping, It does seem like there are a lot of companies out there that need help with this ghosting. It seems to be a super hot topic on LinkedIn. If you even just type in ghosting into the search bar, every single day, new posts will pop up. Thousands of posts will pop up about ghosting and people with all different skill sets and job titles being ghosted. Even people with like high level titles too, VPs, C-suite candidates are getting ghosted, which is just crazy to me. I think it's just such a small world too. You never, you could walk into your next role or something and the person that you ghosted is behind the seat getting ready to interview you. You just don't know, right? So I think it's kind of silly to burn a bridge. And then going off of that, my question for you would be, what do you define as ghosting? Like, in what part of the process do you think it's ghosting when the communication breaks down?
I would say if there's a response from the other person and there's some sort of agreement. So like if I send in a job application, they're like, hey, we'd love to set something up. Let's, and there's some sort of interaction or you've had an interview. And unless they tell you already in that interview, it didn't work out. And then that's when I see it as ghosting, or like not ghosting if they don't tell you, but if they say, okay, you can expect these are the next steps, we'll get in touch with you. There's some sort of pending agreement from their end, and then you just hear nothing else from that. At that point, that's when I classify it as ghosting.
Yeah, that seems to be what most people are saying in my experience as well. From all of the interview experiences that you've had, where do you see the communication break down? Like, is it during the initial application phase? Is it during that, the middle of the interview phase, or towards the end where you think you might be getting an offer?
I've honestly seen it in every situation. I've had issues where even just I've been ghosted when you're trying to set up an interview, an initial discussion. I've been ghosted sometimes when you have an initial interview and they don't tell you about further or subsequent ones, and then you sometimes, depending on the size of the company, maybe you'll hear a couple months later saying an email saying, oh, we decided not to choose you. Or I've seen it, honestly, in my experience, the only place I haven't seen it other than most recently with the story that I mentioned, is the one that's been the least of an impact is once the offer comes. Like, I've had issues where the offer wasn't great or that experience wasn't great, but ghosting at an offer has only happened to me like a couple of times in over 20 years.
A couple of times? Wow. I can't believe that happens. That to me, that seems like too often. I had somebody send me a message the other day and they were saying that it's funny, I just shared this on another podcast too, so people are like, I'm sharing the same story again, but it applies here. I had somebody send me a message and say basically that they had gotten to the finish line. They were told that they were getting an offer. Then they were invited in after. Like, it seemed like the offer was kind of put on hold. They were invited to come to the office. They met with everybody. It went well. They were told again that an offer was coming. And then they were ghosted and they didn't hear back from, I don't think for weeks, or I'm not sure if they ever heard back.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've been fortunate, I guess, because actually when I've been told I'm getting an offer, I've never been ghosted once. It's only been when like the final decision maybe. But when I've been told, yes, you're the one we want, I have yet to be ghosted in that situation.
So it's like you almost don't want to hear it, right? Like, no, don't tell me that. Don't tell me unless you're sure you're making me an offer. Otherwise, you're definitely ghosting me.
Yes, for sure.
Well, this was really good. Was there any other like tips that you have for job seekers that you think would be helpful to try to avoid some of the ghosting as best they can?
Yeah, I guess the tips that I would say is very similar to what I've learned so far, I guess, in sales is try to make it memorable. Try to make like, when you're in when you're in a cold call, even if they agree to a meeting, there's a couple of things that you should do after, such as like ask a couple of more discovery questions, truly dive deep into the pain that they're having, and make it very clear how your product can kind of solve that, so that then they're like, okay, yes, I really need to be at this meeting. And I would say that the same thing kind of applies. There's just through the interview process, make it very clear to them why they should pick you, why they should remember you. Things like when I did my first interview with the hiring manager for my Deel job, I not only sent them a thank you note, but I was like, hey, I know it's my first time in sales, but with discussion, I also took the time to create a 30, 60, and 90-day plan of what I think I can do to hit the ground running and start doing things, providing value right away, and doing things like that and sending that in addition to the thank you email, doing things like that that can make you really stand out. Or there's someone that I follow from Zapier, Bonnie Dilber, and one of the things she said is, like things like just sending a message, sending a voice note, saying, hey, I'm looking forward to meeting you tomorrow and to talk about specifically this, or things that you can. So do that at every touch point during the interview so that there's no reason they can forget you. So even if they decide they're not going to go with you, they can at least be like, okay, I remember this person enough that I have to make sure I get back to them.
That's a really good tip. So you're saying you even send them a message before the next step as well as after?
Yeah, I got that actually from Bonnie, where, I added them on LinkedIn and I just sent them a message saying, hey, I saw that I'm going to be interviewing with you on this and this date. I'm looking forward to it. And then I added a little piece of value saying, I'm really excited to talk about the ELIT product because I have this tech background and I'm just really passionate about it, or something along those lines. I said, I can't remember right now. So that before I get to the interview, it's kind of like you're trying to warm up the interviewer so that when you start, they already have some sort of notion of who you are.
Yeah, I think that's genius. Where did you learn all of this from? I mean, I know you mentioned Bonnie. She sounds great. Maybe we should have her on here. But did you learn most of these tactics and tricks from LinkedIn?
Well, LinkedIn and different podcasts and different books. Or if I had a question like, how can I most stick out, what should I do in this situation? I use ChatGPT a lot in my sales preparation. I use it to prepare for cold calls. I use it to prepare for interviews. I said, here's a job description. Here's my LinkedIn profile. What can I use? What should I highlight? What do I need to make sure I can transfer over, and those kinds of things. I just went and picked it up along the way from different sources.
I think it sounds like you took your job search incredibly seriously.
Yeah, I was definitely for sure. I wanted to definitely make a change. So I tried to tackle it in the same way I would tackle it. I do the job to get the job. I have to show people that maybe I don't have sales experience, but I have to show them I can do the job.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's where sometimes I see job seekers go wrong too, is that they, instead of taking the time like you did to expand on your skill set and really take your job search seriously, and maybe, not apply for 100 jobs a day, but instead really focus on why you're a fit for 10 of them, and really take the time to learn of those companies and the players and sending the notes and getting yourself in front of them. I think that goes, especially in this hiring market, goes further than, again, just applying for a bunch of things and hoping to hear back.
Definitely, I agree. And especially in sales, there's so many people applying, especially tech sales specifically is a field that a lot of salespeople want to get into. And I've been contacted by a lot of people who are like, I want to make the transition into tech sales. And they ask me for meetings or advice or different things like that on how I did it, so that hopefully they can take some information from that.
Yes. Yeah. Everyone should go follow you for sure. I mean, in general, but especially if you're looking for a new role in sales, or if you're looking to make a transition from tech to sales, you post some really good content and some good advice on how to navigate that.
Thanks.
Of course. Yeah. So to wrap things up here, I always like to ask one last question, and we sort of covered it a little bit, but I want to hear, and then you could maybe even just, answer this in like a line or two. What's a simple thing you think that we could all do to help eliminate ghosting during the hiring process?
Make yourself memorable.
On both sides, right? It's a great tip.
Yes.
Yeah. For the job seeker, for obvious reasons, and also for the hiring manager, because if you make yourself memorable and you're likable, it's going to be a lot easier to get that applicant to say yes to your offer should you decide to make them one.
Yeah, and the one thing I would say is like one of the big things for me has been I want to be the salesperson I wish I had when I was in IT. So it's like it goes for both sides, be the employer I wish I had when I was applying. And if you take that from both sides of the coin, yeah, I think both sides are going to do well.
Yeah, treat people like you'd want to be treated, right? Awesome. I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can everybody go and find you?
Oh, thank you for having me. I would say the best place to follow me or find me is LinkedIn. That's where I'm there every day. It's part of my sales job, but I'm also very passionate about sharing my content as well.
And you post pretty much every day, right?
I try to at least 3 times a week.
That's good. Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning into JobGhost, the podcast. Don't forget to get on our wait list at jobghost.ai. And be sure to follow us on social at jobghost.ai on Instagram and JobGhost on LinkedIn. And remember, say no to ghosting.